I'll then turn it over to Brendan, who's going to walk you through. At this time, Election Buddy is the electronic platform that the National Board has selected. So he'll walk you through the Election Buddy process, the undeliverable ballot process, and the election results. So, Brendan, while you are, if you want to go ahead and pull up the election manual, while we are getting ready for that, some housekeeping things. If you were in attendance at the national convention and you attended the resolution session, we are actually missing some clickers from the resolution session. So, what we need you to do, you can pause there, Brendan, because I'm going to go page by page. We do need, if you do have one of those clickers in your possession, it's just a little white clicker. We do need you to return that clicker to the national office. I think the count right now is we are missing 18 clickers. So if you do have one of those clickers in your possession, we are going to ask that you please send that back to 4805. If you don't have all the information and you need it, then please, you can email us at the Field Operations Department mailbox, and we can figure out how to get that back to the national office from you. Another thing I just want to touch on, again, as most of you know, if you know me, you know that I exited the National Board of Directors, and I have well over 25 years of volunteer time in this association. So throughout this process, you're going to see that what we tried to do was eliminate anything that would cause hardship on you as a volunteer. You're going to see that we're going to discuss about what the responsibility of the branch is and also what the responsibility of the national office is as we go throughout this process. But because I have been a volunteer, I understand what this process does to us sometimes. So please keep in mind, this is not our battle right now, getting through this election process. Our battle is at the big ballot box, not the NAACP ballot box. So we need to get through this process so we can focus on the real battle ahead of us. And we must remember, if there is no enemy from within, the enemy from outside can do no harm. So I want to make sure everyone understands these rules are the current rules. We're going to go through the new rules, but everything else in this manual has been the rules that we should have been following. And so this year we are going to follow those rules. We are going to hold the branches accountable to follow this process, as well as we want you to hold the national office and us as staff accountable to make sure that this process is carried out. So I want to say that at the beginning, that way we make sure we are all on the same page, that we are not wavering on these rules. These rules are clear, and these are the rules that we're going to follow. All of our rules are set by the governing body, which is the national board. So any question that you have about a rule, you can get it to us, but we're going to then as staff take it to the national board, because the national board is who creates the policies for the association. So what we're doing today, I wanted to go through the actual manual. The manual is loaded on the website. We do need to make one more change. If you have registered for this webinar, at the close of the webinar next week, we will send out the manual to you, but we do have it on the site. We have identified that there were a couple of places that still reference location. There is no location needed for your election because your election is electronic. So I wanted to make sure we walk you page by page through this manual. This manual should be shared with everyone that has a membership in the association. This manual is not just for officers or for someone that is thinking about running. This manual is open to every member of this association. So when you get through the manual, you're going to see one of the first pages is references the actual candidate consent form. And so what we wanted to make sure was that we know sometimes this form can get lost in the manual. You're actually going to see throughout the manual, there's a live link that will take you to just print this page. Anyone running for office must have this page completed, whether you're coming from the nominating committee or you are being nominated from the floor. This consent form must be filled out. You're going to see on the form that it references the May 1st, 2024 date. So let me clarify for the questions that we have received. If you reference our bylaws, it states a member in good standing to run for election is April 1st. In 2020, because of COVID, the board made a decision to move that date to May 1st. Because the old manual was not taken down off of the website, most people reference the May 1st date. We will honor the May 1st date, 2024, for this election cycle. We will present back to the board in October a request to go back to the original date in good standing, which is April 1st. But for this election cycle, everything you will see will say that in order to run for office, you had to be a member in good standing as of May 1st. You will also see that it says your membership could not have lapsed, meaning you must have a continuous membership throughout this process. You're also going to see that it references you must receive mandatory executive leadership training by May 31st of 2025. Now, what does that mean? That means your national office must provide that training for you. I am here to tell you today that we will go back to providing mandatory training to all officers elected in this election cycle. So understand that when you sign this petition, you are stating that you will receive that training, or you will go into what the penalty will be for not receiving the mandatory training. We must make sure that everyone that is signing up for office understands our rules and abides by our rules. So we will make sure that we will roll training out to everyone. Trey, if you can scroll up from the candidate consent form to the next page. So in the manual, you'll notice the first thing references the new election rules. On this page will be the only rules that have changed. These are the rules that were implemented by the National Board and went into effect as of June 1st, 2024. Everything else in this manual is the same out of our bylaws. It's the same rules we have always had. Trey, if you'll go to the next page. So the new rules that the board voted on, these rules were also sent out to all units after the May meeting. Now, I know the question was of when would you receive the new bylaws? The legal department is currently working to make an availability of the new bylaws draft by the October board meeting. So I know quite a few have inquired and said, when will you get a new copy? That is the reason why we made sure that we've pushed out the information that has changed, but they are in the process of providing an updated set of bylaws in hopes by the October meeting. Now, the other piece of information you should have also received was that all unit bylaws are now null and void. National office bylaws changing. So the only set of bylaws you currently have to go by is the national set of bylaws. So any rules would be standard for everyone because we are only using one set of bylaws. We have asked that when the board opens back up for units to write bylaws, that we actually provide you with bylaw training, because your bylaws should not trump the set of national bylaws. It should add to your bylaws. So just to make it clear again, there are no individual unit bylaws at this time. The only set of bylaws that you should be following are the bylaws of the national office. That would be the blue book that everyone references, and that book is located on the national website. So the new set of rules that apply to elections this year: executive directors or other staff shall not be eligible to sign petitions of a member wishing to run for office. So that means if you are wishing to run for office, an executive director or another staff person is not eligible to sign your petition. We want to make sure that is clear. That is one of the new rules, as well as executive directors and other paid staff are ineligible for nomination, appointment, or election to any executive committee for a period of 2 years after separation of employment in the unit. So I'll use myself as an example. If I was to depart the national office now, I'd have to wait 2 years before I could run for office. This rule is one of the new rules that the board put in place. Adult unit presidents, treasurers, and secretaries may not be related to one or more of other by blood, marriage, common law marriage, or adoption. The board put this rule in place due to the fact of an influx of issues that we have seen across units. What the board is asking is that there should not be any time that anyone cannot run for an office due to a family dynamic, meaning it should not be that only family members can be the people in place that are financial responsible people for the branch or signers. So again, we've had an influx of issues that have contributed to this situation, and the board has decided to eliminate this situation. Now, that does not mean that you cannot run for office. We do not want to discourage anyone from running for office if you do fall within this rule. What will happen if let's say, husband and wife, or parent, or president and treasurer, and you run for office, if you both win, one of you will have to decide to step aside. But we are not going to say that due to you having a blood marriage or common law marriage or adoption that you cannot run for office. Now, if you have questions again about why this rule is in place, you are free to email the election mailbox and we will escalate any questions you have to the National Board and the Constitutional Review Committee. The other rule is persons wishing to run for elected office may not sign your own official nominating petition. Example, if I am running for president, I cannot be one of the signatures on my petition to run for office. You'll also notice this rule is not new, but we wanted to make sure to add it to this page. Well, actually, this one is new. In the event that the national office intervenes in your unit election, the unit must reimburse the national office for travel and lodging expenses resulting from the election intervention. Example, if for some reason someone has reached out to us as you're going through the phases of your election, because you'll have phase 1, August, phase 2, September, phase 3, October, phase 4 is your November election. If for some reason we have to intervene and actually physically come on site, then the unit will be responsible. We are hoping that we would not get to that space because we're going to follow your election all the way throughout the process. Next one, Brenda. So going through the election manual, from this page moving forward, all of this is the same. These are the rules that have been listed in the manual. These are the rules that are listed in our bylaws. Your process should start in August. So if you started this process in June or July, that is not the process. This process clearly dictates you started in August at your general membership meeting. So just in case if there's a unit that you say you don't meet in August, let me remind you that per our rules, it says you should meet monthly. So there should be a meeting happening every month. This August meeting is very important because this is the meeting where you should be picking the date and time of your election. What will happen from the national office is we will send out a form to all unit secretaries. You will need to complete the form after this August meeting and provide us the date and time of your election in November. In the August meeting, your general membership is picking the date and time of your election. The election must run from a minimum of 4 hours. So I want to make it clear again, you are not picking an election date in September, October, or November. In order to make sure we staff the elections and we get everything done that we need to get done, per the rules, your date and time of election is selected in August. What we will also do on our end, because there is a concern that there might not be good information on everyone in Salesforce, we want to make sure we will start on Monday pushing out individual rosters to every unit secretary. Now, if your secretary is in the portal, you already have access to your roster, but we are going to push the roster out anyway. We want to ensure that if someone is on that roster and they have paid the branch and they are not listed in good standing, we need to get that fixed. So we are going to work closely with unit secretaries to ensure that we have good information on everyone in the system. We are also asking secretaries that if you have an email for someone, but that email has not been put in the portal, we are going to need to know that, as your ballot will be pushed out by email and phone. It is very important that we have this information, which is why we are starting this process in August. I am going to say now, this is the only way that the election will be conducted is through an electronic platform. So by now, this is our third round going through this process. We should have an email and phone number for everyone on our rolls. We are going to ensure that we work very closely with the units to make sure we get this done. So you'll see, again, it outlines your August meeting. This notice, I know we've heard some folks say, do you really think that I'm going to mail out a notice to 700 or 1,000 members? I will tell you, this has always been the rule that it was mailed out. We only added the option of email when COVID happened. We are keeping in place that you can email all your members, which you should be emailing them about your regular date and time of your meetings, but you can email them the notice about the election. Now, if you don't have an email address, you need to be locating an email address or you need to physically email them the notice. It is very important that every member of your unit knows when this election will happen. So we want to make sure that we are closely following that process. You will notice the verbiage did not change about you publicizing it in a local newspaper or general circulation. Those rules are still the same. Number two will give you a copy of just the petition. So again, we know you don't want to print off the whole manual sometimes. If you just want the petition, you can click that link and it takes you to just the petition and you're able to print off the petition. Next one, Brenda. Okay, now what we wanted to do this year was give you a sample notice. This is the notice that would be going out by the secretary that's going to list your September meeting, the place and time, and the location. You do have the ability to have these meetings virtual. As we know that COVID is still on the rise in different areas, you are allowed to still have virtual meetings. Some of you have went back into person meetings. That is great. I think a lot of things we conduct have to be conducted in person, but you do have the option to also do virtual. So this is just a sample notice of what your notice should look like to your membership about your September meeting, what will happen in your September meeting, your October meeting where you are reporting out on your nominating committee, the election of your election supervisory committee, and you will notice in the number 3 of November, it is just the information for your election. So also what we want to make sure is that as soon as your secretary sends us the date and time, because it will be in a form that you complete, we will respond back to confirm your date and time of your election. That way there's no question of what date and time is our election. The date and time you sent us, that will be the time that we accommodate you for your election. That is a sample notice that your secretary can either mail or email to your membership. That must go out to your membership so that everyone is clear on when the September meeting, the October meeting, and when the November election will happen. The next page goes into the decisions that you will be making in these meetings. In your September meeting, your general membership needs to determine the number of members that will be elected to the nominating committee. It can range from 5 to 15. Now, notice everywhere you see this, it says general membership. It does not say in a closed executive committee meeting, you make those decisions. These are decisions that are made by your general membership. This is why people pay a membership to the association to be able to have a voice and a vote throughout this process. You also notice that you must determine the number of at-large members to be elected to the executive committee. It must fall within the range that is listed in the national bylaws. You'll notice the next phase talks about electing the nominating committee. It is clearly outlined that the nominating committee shall be elected composed of not less than 5 and not more than 15. It also tells you not more than 2 members of the nominating committee shall be officers or members of the executive committee. That means you cannot have more than 2 people that currently sit as officers or members of your current executive committee on the nominating committee. Throughout this manual, you're going to see that we continue to give you the verbiage of what a member in good standing is. That is a member that has been a member at least 30 days prior to the date he or she is elected to the nominating committee. So they have to be a member in good standing 30 days prior to that meeting. Within 10 days of the election of the nominating committee, your branch secretary shall call for the first meeting of the committee, provide the committee with an updated list of current officers and members of the executive committee, the number of terms they've served, the membership eligibility, the ID number, and attendance record. Now, this means that your secretary had to be keeping up with this information. We will be there to assist with membership ID numbers, but we cannot assist with an attendance record because we do not attend your monthly meetings. The nominating committee's first order of business is to elect a chairman and a secretary. Your secretary is not automatically the secretary of the nominating committee. I want to make that very clear. It clearly says you are to elect a chairman and a secretary. So if you put your branch secretary on the nominating committee, then that only leaves the space of one more person that is an elected officer or a committee person to serve on that committee. Next, it's going to talk about the duties of the nominating committee. Again, you will see that we go through the process of making it very clear of what a member in good standing is, and anyone that is wishing to run for office must be a member as of May 1st, 2024, because that is this current election cycle. You will also see that it says remain a continuous member of the branch throughout this election process. And one of the key things, must live or work within the branch's jurisdiction. There is no wavering on this rule. You must live or work within the branch's jurisdiction. You should only hold a membership in one branch. You cannot hold a membership in multiple branches and run for multiple offices in different branches. So I want to make that clear as well. Next page, Trey. This continues to go through the process of the nominating committee. You will notice that we also added that when you are talking to the candidates, the nominating committee, you do have the ability to do this virtually. Due to COVID, again, we know that it can be on the rise and things can happen. The interviewing of candidates do not have to be in person. You can do that virtually. Again, I want to ask you guys, remember, if it's a question you have, please make sure you put the questions in the Q&A because that's where we're capturing them. Pause there, Trey, go back up. I need to, number 4, the nominating committee shall nominate only 2 persons who have, only those persons who have given written consent to be nominated. So remember, at the top of the manual on page 2 is the nominating petition. If the nominating committee does not have a nominating petition, they cannot nominate you. This is clear. They have to have written consent. Before the branch accepts the nominating committee report, the secretary shall verify that each nominee has given written consent. That's your written consent, the petition. Trey, move up so I can get to the October meeting. Nominations are made and the election supervisory committee is elected at the October meeting of the general membership. A member can be nominated for only one position during the election. For example, no member may run for an officer position and an at-large seat. You cannot be the president and the secretary. You cannot be the president and the treasurer. You cannot be the president and an at-large member on the executive committee. It is clear that you can only run for one elected position. This manual is the election procedures manual. A member does not have to be present to be nominated as long as his or her consent form is presented at the time. So again, they do not have to be nominated. Guys, this last time I'll repeat, if your question is not in the Q&A, we will not capture it and answer it. You must enter your questions in the Q&A and not the chat. A member properly nominated for a position may withdraw from contention by forwarding a letter requesting his or her name be removed by the ballot. that must be given to the chairman of the election supervisory committee. So if for some reason you initially decided to run and now you decided not to run, you must provide a written note stating you are withdrawing from the election. It is not to be given to the secretary. It is to be given to the chair of the election supervisory committee. Nominations. The nominating committee shall submit a report in writing at the October meeting of the general membership. This report shall consist of the names of those persons to fill existing branch offices. Only one nominee can be nominated by the committee for each office. So that report from the nominating committee, in the capacity of president, they can only submit one name. In the space of secretary, one name, treasurer, one name, all the way down the ballot. They can only give one name. Back up, Trey, pause, go back to 8. Now, notice it also says the committee shall nominate not less than 10 and not more than 24 for the executive committee at large. That is the rule that is setting the number of your executive committee for your branch. You can scroll up, Trey. This gives you a sample committee report of what the nominating committee should be submitting to the branch following the nominations. Scroll up a little bit more, Trey. C, after nominating committee chair has read the report, he or she is required to present the secretary the signed committee, the consent forms for all nominees. Should any nominee fail to have signed a consent form presented at the time by the nominating committee's report is read, the nomination is considered null and void. So if you present a petition, but it is not signed by you, that petition is null and void. Before the transaction of any other business, the secretary is required to certify that he or she has received signed consent forms for each nominee and that they are all members in good standing as earlier defined. This is why it is key that we go ahead and have your secretaries to start to verify memberships. We need to make sure that everyone that should be listed on your roll is listed on your roll correctly. We do not want to wait until October to incur an issue with someone's membership. After the secretary has certified that all persons nominated by the nominating committee have presented signed consent forms and are in good standing, the chair of the nominating committee shall move the adoption of the report. After the motion is second, the president carries the motion. Now we move into the process of nomination by petition. So your nominating committee has given you a name for every slot that you have on your ballot because they can only present one name. We now move where we open up nominations from the floor. After the report of the nominating committee has been received, the chair, no officer nor candidate, may chair this portion of the meeting, shall make the following statement. The floor is now open for further nominations for the office of president. You start with every position and go down. This is where if you were not nominated by the nominating committee, but you would like to run for office, you now have someone make that motion and you have your consent form in hand to be presented to the committee. Additional nominations for president, if any, must be made by written petition and signed by at least 3 members in good standing. You can scroll up, Trey. So again, you have 2 processes. You have a nomination by the nominating committee, and then you have nominations that are open from the floor. So there are 2 ways that your name can get on the ballot throughout this process. The chair will continue on throughout every position that you have listed on your ballot. They will then close out nominations. You can scroll up, Trey. So for each candidate, the secretary must certify that at least 3 members who signed the petition are members in good standing. That nominee is a member in good standing, and that nominee presented a signed consent form at the time of nomination. That is where the verification comes in. We also want to make sure, again, throughout this process, we have already eliminated any concerns with someone potentially not being listed on your branch's roster or listed as a member in good standing. We do not want to wait to this process to have this issue. So it is very critical, again, as we push our rosters next week and your secretary already has access to Salesforce, they can already be verifying this information in the portal. It is very important that we make sure we are not disenfranchising anyone throughout this process. We want to make sure that any member in good standing has the ability to run throughout this process and cast a ballot throughout this process. So you'll also see it goes down. All questions regarding eligibility of candidates must be resolved prior to the conclusion of the October meeting. The national staff will check in with each unit to find out what is the date and time of that October meeting. We will make sure that we are staffed to be able to answer any questions throughout those October meetings. We do not want you to leave your October meeting and have any unresolved issues. So any questions that come up from that meeting, we will be available to be able to answer those questions. The second part of this is speeches in support of candidates. You will notice that it tells you the general membership determines the amount of time allowed for such speeches. So your general membership will put the time frame on how long someone has to be able to give a candidate speech. The electing of your election supervisory committee. The manual will walk you through after nominations are made. Your general membership shall elect your election supervisory committee, consisting of 5 members of the branch in good standing who are not candidates for office or at large. If you are running for office or at large, you cannot serve on the election supervisory committee. I'm going to repeat that again. If you are running for office, you cannot serve on the election supervisory committee. A member in good standing, again, is someone that has a membership that is current as of 30 days prior to the date they are elected to the election supervisory committee. Number 2, each candidate for president is entitled to appoint a representative to the election supervisory committee. However, in the event the total number of candidates for president is more than 4, the general membership must elect additional members to the election supervisory committee so that the total number of elected members is 1 more than the appointed members of the committee. Going through the rest of that, number 3 is going to talk about how the election supervisory committee will collaborate with the national office to ensure the branch election is administered every election year utilizing our electronic voting platform. The committee will ensure the election is concluded in accordance with the Constitution and bylaws in order to protect the right of each branch member to cast his or her ballot properly. Guidance for the committee may be found in other sections of this manual. You're also going to see how, again, the election supervisory committee is going to work in collaboration with the secretary and the national office. I want to make it clear that from the moment the election supervisory committee steps into play, the national office will communicate with the chair of the election supervisory committee. So when Brendan goes into the process of voting and talks about an undeliverable ballot, or if someone wants to challenge a ballot, we will only communicate with the chair of the election supervisory committee. There's a reason why that committee is put in place, and that is the committee that we will communicate with, the chair of the election supervisory committee. So that part still talks about the chair of the committee. Again, if a member decides to not run, what the verbiage needs to be that you need to provide to the chair of the committee. The request to inspect the membership roster or list must be in writing. So if you are a candidate for president, you do have the right to review the roster of the unit. That process must be in writing to the chair of the election supervisory committee, and that time must be made available to every candidate running for president. You can go up, Trey. So in preparations for the election supervisory committee must ensure the names placed on the ballot are spelled correctly before submitting the ballot to the national office. So just like we will have a form where your secretary must complete the date and time for your election, From the moment your election supervisory chair is elected, we will provide them a form to submit the ballot to us. We want to make sure, again, that every information that is inputted on that ballot is correct. We don't want anyone's name to be misspelled. We don't want to leave any candidates off of the process. So we want to make sure that, again, that part is covered. Trey, I think we will pause there if you can pull back up the PowerPoint to go through the officer breakdown. And let me see. So there's a question, where and when do you get the challenge ballot? Again, if you're challenging a ballot, we will make that information available to the chair of the election supervisory committee. Once that chair is elected, every branch should notify their members who the chair of the election supervisory committee is. No, we need a petition on every person running for office. The manual states that whether you're coming from the nominating committee or through the nomination process, we need a petition on you. And let me state the reason why is because that petition clearly states that you understand you must receive mandatory executive leadership training by May 31st of 2025. Committee chairs are your executive committee. So we're going to walk through this, but your executive committee is composed of your officers, your chairs of committee, and your at-large members. Those are your executive committee. So some of these questions we covered, I'm going to ask again, guys. The manual is posted. It states how many people can serve on the nominating committee. Only 2 members. It does not specify whether that can be the president, the secretary, or the treasurer. It states that 2 people, officers or at-large members of the executive committee, can serve on the nominating committee. The PowerPoint will be posted at the close of the webinar next week. We will not release the PowerPoint before then. What I will also say is what you are seeing in the PowerPoint, outside of the next 2 slides we're going to show, is in the election manual. So if you read the election manual, everything we're showing to you is listed in that manual. We must have wet signatures on the nomination form. So that means if you are not able to attend a branch meeting and get 3 signatures, you must scan that petition to the next person, but it cannot be digital signatures. At this point, the national board is requiring that we have what we call wet signatures, no digital signatures. The rule also, the manual clarifies whether someone running for office must be present at the meeting or not. They can be nominated and not be present per the manual, but you must have a form on them. Any questions that you have about a person not listed on the roster, we're going to ask that you send it to the election mailbox once we send you the roster. Any person can participate in the election process regardless of whether your meeting is in person or virtual. We address no one can sign their own petition. So that is covered in the manual as well. You are to work with the election supervisory in conjunction with the secretary as a presidential candidate to review the membership roster. Your branch can determine the time frame of how long someone has to review the roster. There is no current time frame listed in the election manual. Per the manual, it states you must make the request as a presidential candidate to see the membership roster. The manual clearly states that there must be a continuous membership. So it means that your membership cannot lapse. It must be continuous throughout this process, starting as of May 1st, 2024, if you want to run for an elected position. When we put this slide up, and there's also a slide I'm going to cover over executive committee. I want to make sure that as you are approaching this process, you understand what you are taking on to run for office. A lot of times I think it's not clear what these positions are. And based off the questions we get, I know it's not clear. This is the breakdown of your officers. We do not go through every bullet because all of these bullets are listed in your bylaws of what the responsibility of elected officers are. What I want to hit is what the bylaws does not hit. Your president. Your president is the executive authority between meetings, not the dictatorship. So your president is not the beginning and ending of your unit. Yes, they are your spokesperson if it comes time that someone needs to step out and speak on behalf of the branch. But any decisions that your president is making should be ran through your executive committee. That is the governing body. So I want to make that clear that your president is elected along with all your other officers and your at-large members. Your president is your spokesperson. Your president is also a signer on your bank account. Your secretary. I know over years we have made the secretary the beginning and ending of the branch as well. Your secretary should be the glue that keeps your branch together because this is your record keeper. But at no time should we weaponize the position to where you do not share information because you are the only person that has that information. Now, if you understand why we protect our roster, there's a reason why we protect our roster. And I want to just check by show of in the chat. Can you put in the chat why we only allow one officer to have access to the membership roster? I want to see how many people actually know why this rule has been in place and why we keep this rule in place. Yes, Ms. Richardson, misuse of information, danger to members, privacy, security. So if you know our history, you would know that there was a time that being a member of the NAACP could potentially cost you your life. Unfortunately, we are still in that time frame. We are also in a time frame to where people could steal our information. It is protecting your information. The other reason why your secretary is the only person at this time that has the ability to edit information in the portal is we need to track if anything occurs in that portal, we know who that person is that put it in and signed out. So understand, if for some reason you change leadership, you should not be sharing your login to the portal because it is going to be under your name. So if leadership changes in the secretary capacity, you should go through the process of receiving new credentials. Now, I understand a lot of other people say that they need access to things, and we are considering that along with the national board, but we must still protect those rosters. We cannot have everyone's hands on those rosters or potentially selling our members' information or leaking members' information. That is a reason why the national board has not voted to change that process. But let me also make it clear that as the secretary, that does not mean that you weaponize that information. If you are the secretary and you are working closely with the president, let's make sure that you guys have a good relationship to where if the president does need to know how to access a committee chair or a member, you provide that information. I'm going to say what no one would say, that we are human beings and at times our personal comes into play, and it shouldn't. So always remember, no matter what, the mission and vision of this association should come first before any personal conflict. Vice presidents, you operate when the president is absent. Let me clarify. That does not mean when you decide that you no longer get along, that you circumvent the president. That means in the absence, meaning that you've reached out, you know something is going on, they're not accessible. VPs also understand that there might be a time that you have to step into the role of president. I've heard quite a few VPs that say, I don't want to be the president. Then why are you running as the vice president? Because that is your role. That is the only office that automatically ascends. So just in case if folks are not clear, secretary and treasurer, you do not automatically ascend. Assistant secretary, assistant treasurer, you do not automatically ascend into the position of secretary and treasurer. The only positions that automatically ascend are vice president positions. So if you have a concern that if something happens and you would have to step into the capacity of the president, you might not want to sign up to be the VP, because that is one of your roles, to assist the president in their absence. A lot of other branches also give the responsibilities of their VPs to oversee committees or to take on different projects. But I want to make sure it's very clear that if you step into the capacity of VP, there is potential that you might have to step into the role as president. Treasurer, this is your financial officer. This is your chair of your finance committee per our bylaws. I want to make it very clear that this is the person that is responsible for dispensing and receiving all funds for your unit. So understand, what I did not say is that when you don't like the outcome of a vote that the unit wants to take that has gone through the executive committee, you refuse to sign a check. That's not what I said. You signed up for a position and you must assume the responsibilities of those positions, all of these officers. And you must follow our rules that are outlined. Next slide, Trey. Executive committee. Your executive committee is your central nervous system. This is the governing body for your unit, not one individual. Your executive committee should be meeting to carry out what potentially action items, budget items that chairs are putting before this body. Those items should then be taken to your general membership meeting so that your general membership knows what's going on in the unit, what type of programs, initiatives, or actions is the unit trying to take place. But no one officer supersedes this body. Each standing committee chair should view a matter from the work of their committee and what they're responsible for. But no one issue ever belongs to a single committee. Your committee should be working in conjunction with everyone to make sure that you're carrying out the mission and vision of this association, but also carrying out the work in your community. Now, these two slides have already been shared if you attended the CRTI. These two slides are from the officer breakdown from the CRTI. We will continue to push this information out as we roll out mandatory training along with other trainings that we will be offered. But what I will tell you is this information, majority of it, except my personal take, is listed in your bylaws and it outlines what the responsibility of your executive committee is. One of the other things I want to address about executive committee, if for some reason after we run this election cycle and there is a vacancy in your branch, it is not the responsibility of the president, the secretary, the treasurer, or one individual member to fill that vacancy. It is the responsibility of your executive committee to fill that vacancy. You would need to open up nominations and vote and fill the vacancy. No one person fills the vacancy. So you will notice throughout this process, we have not talked about anybody being appointed. Everyone is elected except your committee chairs are appointed by the president of the branch. I'm going to say that again. Your committee chairs are appointed by the president of the branch, but the president does not appoint any elected officers. Any person that is an officer or at-large member must be elected through our election process. I want to make that very clear. Okay, Trey, so I think we probably can move into your part of covering the election process. Oh, go back, Trey. Let me cover the November election. I forgot I didn't cover that. So preparations for the election, what we are asking as we continue throughout this process, from the moment you start phase one is your August meeting. Phase two is your September meeting. Phase 3 is your October meeting. Phase 4 is your November election. I'm going to ask that you refrain from emailing individual members of the national staff. I need all emails to come to the election mailbox that is monitored by multiple members. Again, at some point, staff actually does take off. And if they do, I do not want any communication lost in an individual's mailbox. So I'm asking that you please, any questions related to the election process, the election cycle, anything, you please email the election at naacpnet.org mailbox. That mailbox is monitored 24 hours a day. So I need to make sure any concerns or any issues that arise, they come through that mailbox. In prep for your November election, the Election Supervisory Committee must ensure the names placed on the ballot are spelled correctly. I told you, we want to make sure that no one's name is misspelled, no one's name is left off the ballot. The national office will vet those names that go on the ballot to verify that they are still members in good standing before we release the ballot through the electronic process. Your voting shall take place during the hours that you announced in your election notice and that were also provided to the national office. The minimum time of running an election is 4 hours. If you need more than 4 hours, you will need to specify that on the form. But the minimum we will run is 4 hours. There will be no 1 hour election, 2 hour, 3 hour. The minimum is 4 hours. Results of the election will automatically be passed out to everyone that voted in the election. So after the election concludes the time that was set, you will receive a notice of the results of the election. After the election has concluded, we are asking the Election Supervisory Committee to be responsible and assist us with making sure an officer update form is in the system. We have incurred where we are reaching out to officers that have not been officers for years. We must ensure that we have good data in the system on who is currently holding office. We want to make sure any changes that are coming down the pipeline or any information that the president or the chairman wants to share with you, we get that information out to the correct people. So this year, we are working in conjunction with the Election Supervisory Committee to ensure that at the close of that election, we have good information on every officer or at-large member that is elected. We will then reach back out to the branch secretary once the president has made his committee appointments. We also need information on committee chairs. We are starting to have programs in different departments, and we do not have information for who your chairs are in your units. So it's very vital that we have that information as well. Trey, next one. So again, only members in good standing are eligible to vote. We'll see again what the rule is for members that are in good standing that can cast a ballot. The ballots will be sent to either your email or your phone. And actually, I think, Trey, we're sending it to both if we have both on file. One of the things we did discover as we know it becomes an issue, some members have the same email address. If you have the same email address, let's say Mr. Johnson and Miss Johnson have the same email address, Mr. and Miss Johnson at gmail.com. They are going to receive two individual ballots with two different member identifiers. They will be able to vote off their ballot. So if for some reason we are not asking that you go out and create a separate email address, you do not have to. This process has been vetted and checked throughout the system. You will receive two different identifiers that allows you to be able to cast that vote. Trey, I will turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Erica. I appreciate that. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for making time to be with us this Saturday. My name is Brendan Wakefield, also known as Trey, as you've heard. I'm sure I met a lot of you at the convention. So I'm excited to talk to everyone today about your favorite voting platform, Election Buddy. And I know some of you have some reservations, but let me just kick this off by saying, we have actually worked, tested, and vetted this process. We've cultivated a relationship with Election Buddy. And so us, along with Election Buddy, are working to make sure that this process is better for our members. So, how to vote using Election Buddy. Election Buddy issues ballots electronically. They're going to come via email and text message if we have both your mobile phone number and your email on file. Now, one of the things you have to keep in mind is you're going to get a ballot to both methods, but as soon as you vote, whether it be through your phone or your email, the other method will be disabled. So if I get a text message and I vote, then I won't be able to go into my email and click that link and vote also. So you only get one ballot, but to both methods. So voting by email. We wanted to make sure that you all know exactly what the ballots look like. We got a lot of questions. A lot of people think that the ballots come from the national office, but they don't. They come directly from Election Buddy. So you'll receive an email from Election Buddy that says vote now, NAACP election ballot, and it'll show the name of your branch. Once you open that email, you'll see a link that says secureelectionbuddy.com, and then it has your specific voting code. And once you click that link, you'll be taken into the voting platform to cast your vote. Voting by mobile device is very similar, but of course, you're going to get a text message. When you get the text message, and it actually looks the same for both Apple and Android phones, it'll come through, it'll say NAACP election ballot, new ballot notification, vote here. And you'll see your specific voting code that's tied to your ballot. And once you click that, it'll take you into the platform to cast your vote. Another question that we've gotten is, what if I don't have a smartphone? As long as your phone has access to the internet, when you get this link and you click it, if you can go into an internet provider that your phone has, then you'll be able to cast your ballot because it's very similar to voting via email. Now I want to show you all what the ballot will actually look like. So here's an example of the ballot. Once you've clicked your voter specific link, it's going to take you into the platform and you'll be able to cast your vote. You'll be able to select from the candidates, and you'll also see an option to abstain. There's always an option to abstain for every position that is on the ballot in case there's someone that you don't want to cast your vote for. Once you've clicked submit in the bottom right-hand corner, you're going to get a notification that your vote has been cast. And as I mentioned before, if you voted via text, then your email will be disabled. If you voted via email, then your text will be disabled. Now, undeliverable ballots. That was a hot topic last year, and we've worked diligently to put a process in place for undeliverable ballots. So why would a ballot be undeliverable? If a ballot has been marked undeliverable by Election Buddy, that is because we have either an incorrect phone number or email on file. Sometimes, and please, please, please be very careful when typing your email because it can be as simple as you meant to type a .com, but you put a comma. I've seen that a lot. So be very careful with your email because that may cause your ballot to be undeliverable. Now, the process that we've put in place for undeliverable ballots is at the top of the election. If your election begins at 1 p.m., ballots will be issued, and we on staff will see how many of those ballots or notices were undeliverable. So in this example, we can see that these were the ballots that went out, but 5 of the notices were undeliverable. Now we're able to pull a report. We're going to be sending, staff is going to send that report over to the election supervisory chair, and it will be the election supervisory chair's responsibility to get us some valid information to enter and update the ballot and issue that ballot to that member so we can ensure that everyone votes. So you'll have the duration of the election to get that information. So it's very important that during the election, your election supervisory chair is available. We will also have staff available monitoring every election to ensure that every member gets to vote. If if we sent you the undeliverable ballot report, it's expected that you respond to the election email box at election@naacpnet.org with the correct information so we can update the ballots and issue those as soon as possible. And that actually takes us to election results. So, election results, they're going to be sent out to the individuals that have voted. So, everyone who we were able to send a ballot to, whether it have been via text or email, will receive the results. Of course, again, those ballots had to be deliverable. We have to make sure we have good information on file, or else members may not be notified. So the notification for the results looks very similar to the notification for the ballot. You'll see in the text it says NAACP election ballot, new election results notification. See results here. When you click that link, it'll take you directly into your branch's election results, and you'll be able to see each and every individual that won their position, and you'll be able to see exactly how many votes they won by. Um, those voting results are available for all members whose information we do have. So that's why I just want to stress it's very, very, very important that once those rosters come out in August, that we're making sure we get the information updated up front so we can minimize the undeliverable ballots. And that way we won't have many people that we have to try to reach out and contact during the actual election process itself. And that actually brings me to the end. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and I'm going to turn it back over to Erica to kick off our question and answer portion.
All right, Trey, thank you. So you can take the slide down. So
Absolutely.
that have come up that I do want to address. One of the things that we are doing is we are pushing out the digital membership card. That card is coming out in phases to life members and new members. But if you have received the digital membership card, there was a question that asked, how do you update your phone number, your email if it's changed? One, you should be providing that information to your secretary and they enter it in the portal. But you can instantly update your information through the digital membership card. So I want to make sure everyone understands if your phone number or your email has changed, we have put in the option in that digital membership card to go in and edit your information. That information feeds right back into the Salesforce portal. So if something has changed, please go in and do that. Yes, Ms. Gibson, everything hinges on membership info, which is why right now we have a massive data cleanup project. And so again, we are using this part of phase one to make sure that any secretary that has information that is not in that portal must be in that portal. I understand. I used to be a secretary. I know we want to keep our own records, but please understand that information must be in that portal. So when we send this information to your secretaries are going to confirm that they have updated information because that is one of the responsibilities of the secretary. So let me also make it clear, we are not exchanging roles. If your secretary has not been updating information in the portal, we are not swapping out assistants for secretaries right now because that means this information should have nonstop been updated. If for some reason you've tried to do that and you have not been able to do that because you have not received a response from the national office, I'm fully aware of that, which is why we're pushing out the rosters and we also are increasing the amount of portal trainings. But we cannot wait until election time to then realize we do not have correct information on our members. I also want to address if you have members that you do not have emails or phone numbers for, I'm going to pose the question of how are you contacting them now about your meeting? I'm sorry. How are we contacting them if we do not have that information? We should not be taking in memberships and we do not have contact information on members. So if you have members on your roll and you don't have an email or a phone number, now's not the time that we just discovered that. So I'm going to say to you what I said to the group the other night and what I will keep saying. We find interesting ways to advertise our chicken dinners and our freedom funds. This process should be no different or any other information that we push out to our members. So understand every person that pays a membership to this association should receive our information. If they have a landline, we need to contact them and figure out why we've not taken a step further. I want to encourage you guys that you have a community coordination committee. If you have folks that have not gotten email addresses, then that is something you should have been working on, guys. We cannot wait till it's time to do this election to then decide that an electronic process or a process moving this association does not work. That means we haven't been contacting them at all. So if your branch is equipped with computers, we are not saying that you cannot set up computers in your branch and allow them to come in and log in and cast their vote. We're not saying that. But in order for this association to move past 115 years, we must move into the times and we must take our seasoned members with us. There is no reason to leave them behind. And I will always use the reference of Dr. Hazel Dukes, who emails me every day. So there is no reason that we should not be bringing everyone with us. But we must have an email or a phone number on our members. We must communicate with them. Understand right now how critical it is that our members are probably missing the information that we are pushing out on our issues. So I'm sorry, but I cannot allow now to be the time that we say we can't use an electronic when everything else we do is electronic. So I'm going to challenge you that if you have members that you have not bringing with you, now's the time for your committees and your branches to do that. There's no reason why we should not do that. It's time. We're not wavering on this process. It might not be Election Buddy in 2 years, but it will be an electronic platform that we will use. So let's get away from putting blame on our seasoned members because they are not the problem. I can't allow that to keep being the excuse. I'm sorry, because that means we're truly not using them the way we should be using them. Because every unit should be developing a historical project off of your seniors, and we should be capturing their information and their history. If we don't know what has happened, we don't know where we're going. So, guys, I can't keep letting that be the excuse that we can't use something electronically because of our seniors. And if you were on the webinar the other day, the chairman told you most of our seniors are on their phones. They're playing games. We the ballot out either by email or by phone, cell phone. But if you feel that you have a large population of members that don't, then the branch should be equipped with making sure they can come in and vote. The same way when we did it by paper ballot, you opened those doors and you allowed them to come in. Then let's build a partnership to get computers so that they can come there and vote. There should be no reason that we say we can't do this process. I'm sorry, that's just bothering me because then I have the concern of how we're not communicating with them about the big election, or we're not getting the information to them that we should be getting to them. So let's not keep using our seniors as an excuse of why we are not embracing a new process, because they are not the problem at all. Also, if your unit is non-compliant because of AFR, starting next week, notices will go out to any units that have not met your financial responsibility of paying your AFR. And if you have not filed an AFR, you must file an AFR. There is no longer an option of not completing this process. Let's not. Okay, so you must meet your financial obligation. That does not mean that you're wavering from and the same set of officers can stay in place, because we're tracking that process as well. But you will not get away from not following that process of filing the AFR. And I'm not usually in the chat, but I agree with you, Ms. Cooper, exactly what you said. People should not make judgments on anything. Exactly. Compliant. If you do not have 50 members, we should not be running an election. We should be reorganizing you to figure out why you don't have 50 members. So We also will be providing a list of compliant and non-compliant units per membership and finance. So if you are below the 50 members, we will be reaching out to you to find out how we, along with your state conference, can assist you with getting you reorganized. We cannot continue to allow you to operate up under the name and you're not meeting our basic requirements and our rules. So if you do not have 50 members, we need to be figuring out how we can support you to get to that mark and get past it and support your community, because that means there's something going on. And I'll tell you, there's no place we should be going that we are not asking folks if they're a member of NAACP. But I'm also going to tell you that if we're not doing the work in our community, why would they join us? So turn the mirror on yourself and say, are you doing anything in your community that makes someone want to be a member? We have to ask ourselves, if your committees are not operating, you're not meeting, I'm not paying you either to come and listen to people argue all day about themselves. Your meeting should be set to where you're conducting business, but you're also giving back to your community. So there should be some program or initiative that you are putting on at every committee, every meeting. A committee chair or someone should be bringing something to the table that ties into your community. And people are then seeing the benefit from their membership and what you are doing. We have a lot of great units that are operating, but we're not sharing our own story. So remember, if we don't know what you're doing, nobody else knows what you're doing. So we have to make sure that we are sharing what you're doing, we are pushing out best practices, and we're pushing out that information to everyone. I think we touched the digital membership card, non-compliant, no email, no phone. Okay, we answered that one. We answered that one. Okay, so great question. If a member is not able to access their ballot during the window to vote, would they be able to vote by some other means? No. So what we are saying is from the moment that your window of election time runs, staff will be watching your election, but it is the responsibility of your election chair. From the moment we started, there's about a 5-minute window when all the ballots are pushed out, depending on how your unit is. We need you to be contacting that chair and saying, I have not received my ballot. So therefore we can see. Now, on our end, when we first run the election, as Brendan stated, we instantly get a list back that says undeliverable. So when we get those, we're going to be able to see, is this an email? Is it a phone number? Which one kicked it off? Let's say it's your email that kicked back. Your phone number should pick up because we're pushing it out to your email and your phone number. If it's not delivered, we're going to be reaching out to say, we got these many that are undeliverable. Because again, we don't want anyone to not be able to cast a ballot. And that is why it's so important that when you are entering information in that portal, it's correct. But that's why it's important that we're going to push this information out ahead of time so that we can capture if we have a misspelled name, if we have a wrong phone number. We're trying to get ahead of the game, guys, so we don't incur this on the back end. But if for some reason we do, we are prepared to make sure that we're going to be reaching out to figure out how to make sure to get you a ballot. We have had elections that have completely run without any issues because we vetted the information ahead of time and we made sure we had good information. And when they came back undeliverable, we let the people know they're undeliverable. Let's put in new information. Let's get the ballots pushed out. I've already addressed that one. Yeah. You must have an email or a phone number to get a ballot. That has been the rule for the last 3 election cycles. Yeah, so Brendan's presentation is not in the manual. It's in this PowerPoint. So at the close of the webinar next week, we will put up Brendan's part. Brendan's part is just tells you what the voting looks like in the system, but we will not release that part until we've concluded all the webinars. Okay, so I'm kind of confused on this question. It says, yes, the bylaw says the executive committee fill vacancies in the unit officers and the but on the executive committee, this kind of conflicts with what is being said about filling officer positions. So what I'm going to say to that is yes, after your election is ran, if there is a position that is vacant. So let's say you had somebody run for president, VP, secretary, but no treasurer. We ran your election, nobody ran for treasurer. Your executive committee will then meet to take nominations to fill that vacancy. That's the clear rule. So yes, your executive committee fills vacancies after the election cycle. Your executive committee does not fill vacancies and we haven't ran an election. So please let me know if I did not answer that. And then I will definitely make sure I'm clarifying that. Oh, now this is a good question. Clarify item 4 on page 7. Brendan, can you bring back up page 7? Says we have persons desiring a place on the executive committee thinking that there is pay for the position, which increases the number. There are even persons who desire. Oh, okay. So in this round of new rules pushed out from the board, they elected to just push out the election rules because we're in an election cycle. There is also language that will be changing and potentially rolls out in January of 2025 to clarify that volunteers are not paid. So let me clarify that if you are running to be elected for an officer at large member in a branch, that is not a paid position. The only staff that are paid are staff at the national office, staff that are executive directors, and your executive directors must come through the national office and be approved by the national board before you can put them in place, because we must make sure that your unit or state conference has the resources to support a staff person. If you are hiring other staff, admin assistants, project managers, all those things, you still must notify the national office, because there is a way that we must make sure you are paying that staff, and we know that you have paid staff. If by chance there's something that comes around to where you receive funding and you want to pay people, that is identified in that grant as a deliverable, but you still must run it through the national office because we've had an influx of those issues. But I want to make sure right out the gate, if you run for office, that is not entitling you to a stipend. So please don't build it in the budget that you're paying somebody. You are a volunteer. And I will be the first to say, I understand everything that you do as a volunteer because I just had those shoes 7 months ago. And that is why it is very important that we clean house and we make sure that we are supporting the volunteers from the national office side, and we are giving you the resources you need so that we don't have to do this, the internal fighting, all the things of not following the rules, because we're missing out on the times that you should be on the ground doing the work in your community. So we got to clean house, guys. And we got to get the folks that we know put your community first, the mission and vision of this association first to do the work. You must put the personal aside. And I'm going to be the person that keeps saying that. And I know sometimes some people don't like for me to say that, but that's the truth. In order for us to keep moving forward, we really have to start to build our communities and grow it and get past the infighting and stop weaponizing the Constitution and the bylaws. Sometimes I think they got arms and feet the way we throw it at people. That is why these sessions are open to every member of this association. There's nothing we are telling you today that we are trying to hide or not allow anyone else to know. If you are a member of this association, you are entitled to all the information that we are sharing. We did used to do ballots that were mailed in, and we did used to do them for the regional and at-large ballots, and over 70% of those ballots were mailed back to the national office undeliverable. And it also created a process of everybody not being able to vote throughout that process. So we've actually gone away from those and now using the electronic process. Okay, Brendan, I see you got that one. If you want to know what your geographical area is based off of what your original charter was. So I would definitely encourage you to probably reach out to your state conference or check with other seasoned members in your unit. We are working to try to get all of that information. Brendan, so is there a hard stop on the ballot? Let's say I open the ballot and I've taken 10 minutes as I'm reading it. Is the ballot gonna time out on me?
No, it does not time out. And my apologies if I misunderstood that question. The ballot does not time out. It's open for the entire time. Um, and if for some reason a candidate did not want, I'm sorry, a member did not want to vote for a candidate and they had abstained on every candidate, they have the option to do so.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So I'm trying to. So any questions you have that are not specific to this election process, I'm going to ask that you email them to the Field Operations Department mailbox so that the governance and compliance team can address those questions. So if you're placing those questions that do not directly relate to election, please place them in the Field Operations mailbox. Your questions are what we are using to develop your trainings because we realize that a lot of these questions stem from people either not having training or not understanding our rules. Okay, let's see if we have any more. I believe the rule is clear on who cannot be related. Committee chairs are appointed. Committee chairs are not elected. Committee chairs are appointed by the president. So the language in the manual references an interim secretary. That's if your secretary is running for office and decides to step out of that capacity to not cause conflict. So there's no interim in between outside that process. Life memberships are life memberships unless you fall in the guidelines of being suspended and your membership is taken. But life memberships are life memberships. Okay, got that one clarified. All right, so question came up. Now, there is a resolution, and everyone should have seen this resolution. I think it was number 88. We do have a resolution about if you decide to run for office. So just to clarify that, we just had a meeting yesterday to clarify some more language, but if you are running for a office outside of the NAACP, partisan, nonpartisan, city council, school board, state, local, anything, you must step aside from your elected position in a unit or a state conference. So I'm going to pause and repeat that again. And this resolution is actually on the national website. It's an internal resolution and it's labeled NAACP unit officers running for public office. From the moment you announce your candidacy and fill your paperwork, or if you fill your paperwork first, announce whichever one comes first. From the moment we know you are running for office outside the NAACP, the rule is that you must step aside from the NAACP. That is because you are running a campaign that you should be able to speak on the platform you want to speak on, but it cannot be tied to the association. So I want to make that clear. There is no wavering on that, which is why I had a meeting with legal yesterday to make sure that it's very clear, and we will be pushing out that resolution again. So if you are running for office, you must step aside, and the process of you coming back will be clearly laid out. We must make sure that you have the ability to run for office. The other thing is we don't want anyone to feel like the NAACP is trying to punish you because you've elected to run for office. That's not the goal. The goal is to protect you as an individual and to protect the association. So we are not saying that if you choose to run for office, we're going to spank your hand. That's not what we're saying. But we must protect your platform and protect the association's platform at the same time. So this rule is not to punish you. This rule is to make sure that everybody is doing everything that they need to do in that space. So that should answer the question of if you can run for office. That one. Okay, I think we got all of them, guys. Did I get all of them? Am I missing any?